Well, welcome to H360 Health Talk. I'm here this afternoon with Joe Raiola, who is the president and artistic director of Theater Within, which is a really cool not-for-profit behind the John Lennon Real Love Project, and we're going to hear all about that, which it is a free songwriting and music workshop for those whose lives have been impacted by cancer, and we all know somebody that's happened to. We're going to find out what this project that Joe is working on is and how it affects people and how it benefits so many people here and around the country. So stay tuned for that. But before we bring Joe in, I just want to give you a little background because he does have an interesting background. Joe, early in his career, was an executive producer and artistic director at the Theater Within. I think I mentioned that once. But for 33 years prior to that, he was a staff member and frequent contributor to Mad magazine, something I read in my youth and thoroughly enjoyed. He retired in 2017 after a 20-year career with Mad as the senior editor. And I'm going to hit him up and ask him a couple questions about his career at Mad because, again, Spy versus Spy and some of the things I used to read in that magazine really fascinated me as a young boy. Joe started out as a comic, working in the New York City club scene, but his life changed in a big way in 1979 when he joined the Theater Within workshop. Led by primal therapist Alec Rubin, an experimental workshop taught artists to accept deep feelings, develop material for the stage. Well, Joe, thank you for joining us today.
Good to be here, Dave. Thanks for having me.
So, Joe, I want to start out early in your career, Mad Magazine, you're a comic. The theater is not something that is foreign to you, obviously, as you've taken on your role with the Theater Within. Tell me about how you got started in comedy and what led you to Mad Magazine.
Well, what got me started in comedy was actually getting my tonsils taken out. That's what started me in comedy.
Well, that's no laughing matter.
When I was 3, my mom and dad told me that they were taking me to a party. And they were, in fact, taking me to have my tonsils taken out.
And you fell for the old, we're going to the party.
I did fall for that, and this is my first memory. I remember being strapped to a gurney. I was probably drugged up, and the doctor had something in his hand. It was an ether mask, and I thought he was going to kill me. I thought the doctor was going to kill me, and he brought the ether mask to my face, and I remember screaming out, "No, doctor, no, doctor!" And then I woke up in a crib and started throwing up. Now, you may wonder, how does that lead one to comedy? Years later, 8 years old, I was visiting my aunt, and she had a Bill Cosby album called Wonderfulness. And I just put this album on. I don't know why. It was a picture of Cosby on the front, or driving a go-kart down a hill. And the first track on the album was about the time Cosby got his tonsils taken out.
Yeah.
And how people lied to him and how he was throwing up and he was promised all the ice cream. And here's this black man from Philadelphia telling this white kid story from Brooklyn. And he made it better. I felt a lot better about getting my tonsils taken out because I was able to laugh at it. And that's what made me want to go into comedy, and that's what made me want to be a comedian, hearing Bill Cosby talk about having his tonsils being taken out and me being able to relate to that.
So through those deep memories of that experience of you getting your tonsils out and then listening, the levity of Bill Cosby talking about that kind of lighten the atmosphere a little bit, made you see things in a little different way.
Right. Comedy made it better. And of course, telling your story. Cosby was telling his story, and that made it better for him, too.
Sure.
Interesting thing, telling that story made it better for him, and it made it better for those hearing the story. And there's a powerful lesson in that as well, and of course that relates to not just comedy, but creative expression in general, which is at the heart of what Theater Within does, and it's really at the heart of what we bring to something like the John Lennon Real Love Project.
So, young man, you hear this comedy, now you find yourself at Mad Magazine. How did you get there?
When I got out of college, I drove a taxi for 8 years.
Here in New York?
Here in New York City, and that was my goal. I took a lot of pressure off the undergrad years, knowing that when I got out of college, I was going to drive a taxi. And that's what I wanted to do. And I bombed around the club scene for a bunch of years. I got my first professional work working with National Lampoon alumni in the 80s, in the early 80s, Tony Hendra and Sean Kelly and those guys.
Sure.
And at the time, as fate would have it, Al Feldstein, who'd been Mad's editor for almost 30 years, was retiring, and Mad was looking for new writers and new blood. And back in those days, you'd find a job by looking in the newspaper. There was an ad in the Village Voice and an ad in the New York Times that Mad was looking for writers. And a buddy and I, we started submitting material, and Mad started buying it. And in 1985, Al resigned. He retired, and I was hired. And I, spent the next 33 years at Mad as an editor.
So, your experience with comedy, your experience at Mad, you're seeing things in a little different way. You're viewing the world through a little bit of a different lens. You're bringing joy to people and smiles on their face when they read your work or hear your stand-up routine. How did that lead you now to then?
Well, things are a little jumbled here because it didn't all happen in a straight line. I was not a very good stand-up comic. I didn't like the comedy scene. I didn't like doing punchline joke. I didn't like doing setup, punchline. I was never that kind of comic. And I heard about this workshop on 72nd Street in the Upper West Side that was doing something a little different, a little experimental. And I auditioned for Alec Rubin, who was the founder of the workshop, which goes back to 1962, and I got into the workshop. And Alec was really about deep creative process. I no longer had to worry about telling jokes. I was able to tell stories, and I was able to find my humor and my real talent by telling stories, the stories that I wanted to tell. It was liberating to be able to do that and start working in the theater more than in comedy clubs. Here's the thing. We were the theater workshop, the neighborhood theater workshop on 72nd Street, down the block from the Dakota, where John and Yoko lived. And Alec was not just a director, he was also a therapist, a primal therapist. And John Lennon had famously or infamously gone into primal therapy in the late 60s, 1970. It changed his creative life. It resulted in that amazing first album, the Plastic Ono Band album, with those incredible songs, Mother and Isolation and Hold On John, and all that heartbreaking tenderness and anger. John was just, he called that album Sergeant Lennon. He loved it so much. And we loved him. We just loved him. More than just as a Beatle. He was more than as a rock star. He was a neighbor. He was a couple of blocks away. We looked up to him because we felt we were doing our own version of a similar kind of work, expressing ourselves fully, passionately, taking creative risks. And then, of course, John was senselessly shot. Yeah. And we were devastated. I mean, we just took it very, very badly. This was 1980. I wasn't at Mad yet. I hadn't even started with the National Lampoon guys yet. I was, a young man. And we impulsively, soon after John died, wanted to do something for him. So we said, we were going to do a play, and that got canceled, and we ended up doing a John Lennon tribute without ever thinking it would, be more than just that one thing. Let's do a Lennon tribute. And it was very powerful and very emotional and very sad. I guess the coming together of artists and actors and storytellers and poets and musicians and dancers. And Alec and I said to each other, but we really got to do this again. We really got to, let's do it again. And here we are 38 years later. Of course, the theater within has changed a lot. It's a not-for-profit now, sure, with a mission of keeping these workshops alive, yeah, that Alec started doing in 1962. But now we're specifically bringing these workshops to the cancer community at Gilda's Club NYC.
Is storytelling a dying art?
I don't think so. I think storytelling goes back to the cavemen. I think the most carving pictures, carving with stones, images on in the caves was a form of storytelling. Sure. And I think that people tell stories all the time, different ways, yeah, in songs. Comedians tell stories, of course. There's storytelling groups. I think storytelling. I don't think it's a dying art. I think that it's more difficult now in some ways to get people to go out because they can see everything at home.
Well, I think it's also hard to tell a story in 140 characters. So if you're on Twitter now, I think they doubled that, so it might be 280. But nonetheless, I mean, the art of storytelling, takes. I'm fascinated because we'll get to it about the therapy that you found when you first got away from the punchline jokes
Right.
to the getting up and sharing a story.
Right.
And how that made you feel, and how it made the people that listened to that story feel that they could relate to somebody. And you look around and you think, wow, okay, whatever the story was, gosh, I thought I only had the crazy family in New York. But no, everybody does. Or gosh, I thought I was the only one that had a friend diagnosed with cancer. But no, we all know people, and we're all impacted by that.
Being creatively expressive makes us whole, and it's an important part of life, creativity. And there's some people out there who think, well, I'm not creative, but actually that's not true. We all have a creative impulse. With some of us, it's been squashed down pretty badly, and that's unfortunate. But amazing thing happens when you get a group of people together in an environment in which they're creative to be expressive in any particular modality. And music, of course, as you and I were talking about before we started shooting, is a very powerful way to do that, particularly with an inspiration such as John Lennon.
Is it hard to draw that out of people when they first appear at one of your workshops, and they're not really sure what to expect, but once it gets going, do you find people that readily open up and share and really get involved?
There's a kind of hunger for this that I sense with the workshop participants at Gilda's Club. They're ready. They want the guitar in their hands. They want the opportunity to write a verse. Either they know song structure a bit, they want to know it more. They want tools. Most people are ready. Now, there's a spectrum, as in any group. There are some people who are quieter and shyer and might not engage so much the first week, say, of a workshop. But what I'm observing is that people are ready and really wanting an opportunity to be expressive.
Yeah.
And there's permission to do that in a workshop like this.
So now you're the Theater Within, bringing artists together, bringing people together, storytelling, expressing themselves in whatever modality or creative outlet that is appropriate, to now the unfortunate shooting of John Lennon. We're going to honor him by the project now. And so the inspirations, and we talked a little about this prior to coming on, about the songs and the way that John thought and how he felt about certain issues and how he put those thoughts and feelings into words and song. How do you go from the Theater Within to saying, okay, there's a group of people out there that really want to express, and song is the way we're going to do it. And we're going to do it through one of, if not the greatest, one of the greatest songwriters and singers of all time, and partnering up with Gilda's Club to make that a reality.
Well, I'll say this. Lennon's legacy doesn't mean anything unless it inspires you to have a positive impact. That, to me, is John's lasting legacy. They give a damn. So the idea of doing something with music in relation to John, of course, was a natural thing. The question was what? So the evolution of this project didn't happen instantaneously. It was actually, it evolved over a period of time. I was working with a young woman named Stephanie Carlin, a musician and a singer-songwriter who was teaching songwriting to children. And I was impressed with what she was doing with these kids and what she was getting out of these kids.
Were they special needs children?
No, just kids in Park Slope, Brooklyn, not special, nothing, just kids.
Kids.
And Stephanie was on it still is on the production team of the annual John Lennon tribute. And I approached her. I said, you know what? We should do a Lennon workshop. We should do something here. I mean, what you're doing is great, but what if you put Lennon over this and do a Lennon workshop and get it to a community that would really need it and do it as a theater within program, give it away. And she liked the idea, and we said, oh, where are we going to do it? I don't know where to do it. So the idea came up, let's do it at the hospital. This was in 2014.
Yeah.
And so we brought it to a children's hospital at Montefiore in the Bronx. And, we had a positive impact with the workshop there, but the hospital was not a good setting for this for several reasons. One, sometimes children in the hospital were just too sick to participate in a workshop, too ill or didn't have the strength. Other children were able to participate, but the idea at the hospital is get the kids home as quickly as possible. Right. Next week we'd come, those kids wouldn't be there.
Sure.
So you couldn't have any continuity. We were doing a kind of triage work there. We were bringing joy, we were bringing happiness by coming into the hospital with the program, but it clearly wasn't a place where we could take deep root. So we were sitting with, well, would be the best home for this workshop? Where could this workshop take root, have a powerful positive impact? What's possible? And I was feeling a certain pressure. This was in 2015 because it was summer, we hadn't figured it out yet, and I'm just sitting at home one night and I put the Google machine on and I'm thinking to myself, how about a cancer support group? What if we brought the tribute, what if we brought this workshop to a cancer support group? And I wasn't thinking Gilda's Club. I just put cancer support group, New York City, and the first thing that comes up is Gilda's Club. I said, Gilda's Club?
There you go.
Now that's be interesting. And I'm thinking there's an interesting spiritual, psychological connection, Lennon and Gilda Radner.
Sure.
Maybe. So the next day, sometimes things just happen in the most simplest way. I picked up the phone and I called Gilda's Club. And I said, can I talk to Lily Stefani, who's the CEO? And someone said, hang on. And there on the other end of the phone is Lily. And I say, hey, I'm Joe from Theater Within, and I produced the annual John Lennon tribute in New York City for 37 years, and we do a workshop called the John Lennon Real Love Project that we had it. Now,
we need a home for him.
I figured that she would have hung up on me by then.
Yeah.
Someone calls and they start talking about John Lennon. John also attracted a certain crazy around him also, But I guess I said something right, or Lily was patient and kind to the phone, and we spoke. We didn't talk long. I don't remember that call as us talking long, but we spoke long enough to make a connection. And she said, "Okay, why don't you come in, and and let's talk about it." So we did. Stephanie and I came in. We met with Lily and a couple of the staff members there at Gilda's Club, and we were just envisioning it then as a children's program. And they said, oh, you know what, let's give it a whirl. And we did. That was the fall of 2015.
Not so long ago.
Not so long ago. And you could see it had a life. You could see there was something there. So we decided to do it again. And, in 2016, we started to bring some more programs over there, a meditation program and an art program. And I started to think, well, why are we limiting this to kids? Why are we limiting this to 5 to 12-year-olds?
Right,
I mean, while that's a great community to reach,
sure,
and we're reaching, children who've lost a parent to cancer or children who have a parent going through the journey, we could expand this. So that became the next level of
phase two,
and that blossomed to something that I didn't quite expect. I mean, last year we did 20 Real Love Project workshops last year, and this year, are hoping to do more. And I'd like to find out what the capacity is there. In other words, how much the community really if we make it more available, if we can reach more people within the community, and it's been rich. It's been transformational for me to witness, and for the workshop leaders to teach, and the feedback that we're getting is certainly positive, and it really is great power in expressing oneself through music, and with John Lennon as the inspiration for it.
Gets no better.
Yeah, well, it doesn't get much better than John as a fearless songwriter.
Yeah.
And
so take me through what happens when I show up at a workshop. What can I expect to happen?
It depends on the group. But the adult workshop now is being taught by Pete and Maura Kennedy, who are wonderful songwriters. And they've usually been starting by putting a guitar in everyone's hand. And
so there's people that may have picked up a guitar before, and there's somebody that holds it and they say, no, turn it around, it goes this way.
Right. Some will play a little bit, some will not play at all.
Yeah.
And they
no strings attached.
Yeah.
Huh?
That's a good one.
I'm working on my routine.
Keep working. They started a recent workshop with eight days a week. Just a simple chord structure of 8 days a week, showing the 3 or 4 chord progressions, and teaching the verse and the chorus of eight days a week. And maybe they'll spend a fair amount of time on that just to get the hang of it. Mm-hmm. And then basically use that as a jumping off point. Say, these chords can be used in different ways. And they'll start playing with the chords and showing, they'll teach just the most rudimentary songwriting structure. And they'll show, Pete and Maura might show how those chords may be used for a country song or a blues song or a hip hop song. They'll just spin them out in different ways as example.
Yeah.
And really, after people will take guitars home, then we lend the guitars out for the course of the workshop. But then really what happens is the direction of the workshop, with John as, the touchstone, keep coming back to him in some way, is really focuses on people writing words, writing verse and writing choruses and putting their simple poetry to music. Some of it's free form, some of it's more structured, but it's amazing. After 4 weeks, people have written songs. In the children's group, the kids in a group write a song in one session.
Huh. But Joe, weren't you concerned when you're sitting down that night in 2014, I guess, and you're thinking to yourself, boy, I got to find a home for this? How do you go from storytelling and inspiration to, I'm going to find a cancer support community? Because cancer is not a fun topic. If cancer affects people in different ways,
right.
Whether you're a patient or a caregiver or a child of a patient. So was there something behind that? What led you to really hone in and say it's a cancer support?
I'm going to say a couple things about that. One, I'll come back to what I said before, that John's legacy doesn't mean anything if it doesn't mean having a positive impact. So that's the first hoop I wanted to jump through. I wanted to make sure we were having a positive impact. Two, and I'll admit this freely, even though my dad died of brain cancer, he has stage 4 glioblastoma, I wasn't looking for a cancer support group. That was a thought that came up, and then it kind of like appeared.
Yeah.
And that just felt right to me. Boy, that's a community that might benefit from this. But I wasn't sure until I actually dove in there. And here's what I've found since. And we were talking about this before as well. It's not really a workshop for cancer survivors per se. We don't take that approach. We don't say to people, talk about your cancer or write a song about your operation or your tumor, although some have done that. Mm-hmm. I think the reason this workshop works so well is because we don't do that.
Yeah.
That people are able to come forward with the stories what they want to tell. I mean, a cancer diagnosis, of course, changes your life in many ways, and may change your outlook on life in many ways, and change your relationships in many ways. there's a lot going on as you're going through that journey. And here's an opportunity to express anything that comes up along the path, whether it's directly or indirectly related. And I come back to Lennon there. Lennon was so free in his expression. He expressed his rage and his tenderness in his music and everything in between. Love of family, love for the world, disappointment, all that. So here's a free space. And when I say free, I mean open.
Yeah.
Where you can bring your experience and share it in a creative and in a musical way. And the fact that you're going through the cancer journey, while clearly important, is in a way not the salient issue.
Well, I think that's the cancer journey is just an avenue of getting the expression of feeling to percolate to the top, to be want to have that story told, right? If you think about just pure human emotion, from if you're the patient, but sitting in front of that physician and hearing those 3 words, you have cancer, right, to, you know, what do we go through? The whole range of emotions, from anger to denial to, you know, you go through that. And so, as I look back in the way that John Lennon's music, it's impacted my life and things that I've thought about and contemplated about, it's the same thing, right? Some of his songs are very happy and about beautiful things, and then other songs are about things that aren't so great.
Right.
But so I agree with you there, and I think that the cancer journey is just the avenue that lets those feelings percolate, and then the guitar in the hands and saying, there's a way to express yourself. I know many actors and actresses that off stage, you know, they have trouble looking you in the eye and carrying on a conversation. They're very introverted, but they get up on that stage and they know their lines, and right, it's like they dominate the room, you know, in their craft, in their art. And I think that it's very similar to what I'm listening to what you're saying, and my own experiences with cancer in my family and my friends, and what we do here at Healthy O 360, and how we see people coping with those issues. And that's why, you know, we're a community of storytellers, right? It's so therapeutic to share your story. People want to share.
Being creatively expressed makes us whole. And as you say,
it also exposes us in a lot of ways, right? Because through that expression, right, we're letting, like we talked about this, you know, a man versus a woman. Some men find it very difficult to express their true feelings, but put them into a journey and put them into a workshop, and all of a sudden this creativity comes out, and it's beautiful.
In this workshop, there are a couple of things that are given. Everyone has received a cancer diagnosis and heard those words. Everyone's found their way to Gilda's Club.
Yeah.
That's a tremendously important step in this. They found their way there.
Yeah.
To be part of the community and all of the things that Gilda's Club has to offer, of which this is just one. And then they have found their way to Theater Within, and the kind of transformational workshops that we provide there, specifically in this case a music workshop that's inspired by John Lennon. So I guess, I mean, you could say in a way that this, you know, getting to this workshop is in that sense part of their journey with this whole thing.
If you think back on the many workshops that you've done, and you think back about the music of John, and is there one song of his that comes to mind that people gravitate toward that melody and put their own words to that melody, or is it kind of across the board?
You know, there are different songs at different times. Of course, Imagine is a perennial favorite that we use in the workshop quite frequently. But there are lots of different possibilities there in terms of, you know, that could change from week to week. There's so many great Lennon songs. I think that the one I've been picking as my favorite recently is In My Life, which I think is one of those, it's the only song I can think of that you could play at any transition in life, a birth, a death, a bar mitzvah, a wedding, an anniversary, that song seems appropriate at any milestone in one's life. And for me, that makes it a truly remarkable and beautiful song.
So what's next? What's the next
Well,
evolution and the next phase?
we were just talking about that, and I think that we just like to grow the John Lennon Raiola project at Gilda's Club as much as we possibly can, and we're talking about bringing new workshops there, expanding what we have. There are 3 programs now, mainly. We have the John Lennon Raiola project. We have a meditation workshop called Imagine Peace, Practice Peace. We have an art workshop called the Mad Art, and several other workshops that we're talking about. A writing workshop, an improvisation workshop. So it's kind of an ongoing dialogue between Theater Within and Gilda's Club now, in terms of, I think from our perspective, we feel as though we're serving the community. So it needs to work there. If it doesn't work for them, it doesn't work for us. But we're in a really interesting creative place with it, I think, of exploring ideas and asking ourselves, well, what kind of creative workshops can we bring to the cancer community here? What are people interested in? What can we do that will impact people on this difficult journey in a positive way? So I'm excited about where things are, and it's a real honor for us to be at Gilda's Club. We're just so deeply honored to be part of everything that's happening there. It's a remarkable place.
Well, Joe, when we come back, we're going to invite Lily to come in. We're going to talk about Gilda's Club. We're going to talk about the workshops. But before we pause here for a brief break, so where can we find you? Where can we find Theater Within? What contact information would you like to put out there for our viewers?
There are two main places online to go. One would be theaterwithin.org, which is our organizational page. But we also have an event page for the annual John Lennon Tribute, which is lennontribute.org. And you'll find information there about all the Theater Within workshops, the John Lennon Raiola project. There are a couple of videos as well. One that we shot at Gilda's Club, in fact. There's a recent piece from New York One that was shot at Gilda's Club as well. So there's lots of information there. And of course, you can contribute to Theater Within at either of those websites as well.
Awesome. Well, you're going to hang out. We're going to bring Lily in. More to come, and we'll be back right after this.